Hello, thank you for tuning into the Natural Health Rising podcast. My name is Rachel Smith. I am a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and I've helped hundreds of people naturally reverse symptoms of autoimmune diseases and other health challenges, from digestive issues to hormone imbalances. And in these weekly episodes, you're going to learn from myself and top health experts from around the world about functional medicine and holistic health tips to help you rise to your healthiest, happiest self. Welcome to the podcast, everybody. This episode is going to start quite different than other episodes in the past because I'm going to do some life shares. And yeah, just going to get a little bit more personal with whoever is out there listening. And if you guys like this style of podcasting and you like the little lifestyle debrief in the beginning, let me know. You can always send me a message on Instagram. I reply to all of my messages. You can send me an email, reach out to me. Let me know if you guys are enjoying this because my life is about to change very drastically. I am going to live nomadically, and I am so excited for this. I have pretty much lived nomadically in a sense for a lot of my life because I've just moved around a lot. I've moved probably 13 or 14 times over the last 11 years. I did live in Costa Rica for about 3 months, a little over 3 months at a certain point straight. And I just have a deep, deep love for travel. And since I would say, I think I was 21 when I first started getting this idea that I wanted to go live in different countries. But at the time, there was just a lot of times in my life where it wasn't quite the right opportunity for me to do that. And so now is finally that time for me. And you can probably hear it in my voice how excited I am to be doing this journey. So I will be leaving Arizona on August 2nd. So this episode may already be out by then. I might already be in Spain, which is the first country I'm going to. And I don't know where I'm going after that, which I think is the most exciting part. I really just want to go with the flow and see where life takes me and what countries really call to me. And so I will be living all over the world for about the next year while having my apartment rented out and my vehicle rented out back in the US. And then after that year is up, I will make the decision if I want to come back and stay, or if I want to maybe put my stuff in storage or get rid of it and continue traveling. So if you want to hear more updates about that stuff, I would definitely love to share tidbits on the beginning of this podcast. Or I'm also thinking about maybe starting a travel podcast, a travel blog, a vlog. If you guys are interested in that, again, send me a message. Let me know what kind of content you want to hear. Obviously, this is a health podcast. So I thought it would also be fun to possibly share some information on health while traveling, because it is not easy to maintain optimal health when you're traveling all the time. And I definitely have hacks for living a healthy lifestyle while traveling and how you can do things like protect yourself from toxins or reduce jet lag and reduce inflammation and everything that you can get from flying all the time. So there's a lot of things that I can talk about around that. And I think that would be personally fun for me to share. So again, if you guys want to hear that, let me know. And another update, I promise I'm going to get started with the episode soon. I got this amazing microphone, and I hope you guys can hear the difference as I'm recording this intro. I got the Shure MV7, and I did a lot of research, and I found out that this is like the best one out there for podcasting and vlogging. So I love it so far. This is my first time using it. The audio will be different for the rest of the podcast because I actually had previously recorded this episode and then I just got the microphone recently. And it is about time that I upgraded my equipment. I have been doing this podcast for over a year and a half now, which is crazy to think about that I've been, bringing an episode per week to you guys for about a year and a half. And it was time. And so I have the best microphone now. Also upgraded the video quality. If you guys don't know, I've been slowly uploading all of the older episodes onto YouTube and starting to use that as a platform as well. And it's actually useful because sometimes in episodes, there's been guests who have maybe had a prop to talk about something on the podcast episode, and they're showing it, or they're showing something in their office. And it's kind of nice to get to see everything going on the podcast. And so you can find those on my YouTube channel. It's Natural Health Rising as well. Of course, all of those older episodes, again, they're slowly getting up there. And then once we get to after this episode, the video quality is going to go way up as I now have the Sony mirrorless camera to go with this. So total overhaul on the podcast right now, and very excited to continue bringing you guys quality guests and quality content. Okay, enough jabbering. I'm sure you guys just want to hear about my guests today and hear this incredible conversation about the carnivore diet and ancestral living. So I had 2 podcast guests today, which was different. This was the first time that I interviewed 2 people at once. So that was really fun for me. I had Phil Escott and Ben Hunt with me. So Phil Escott is a health and lifestyle consultant, 8-year carnivore, and drummer. Aside from being a co-author of the book, The Red Pill Revolution, host of the podcast series Red Pill Buddhas, and author of the best-selling Kindle book Arthritis, the best thing that ever happened to me, Phil Escott is recognized worldwide as one of the leading voices in the dietary world of carnivory and the healing power of meat and fat. He consults with clients worldwide, helping them to reverse their metabolic and autoimmune issues. My second guest, Ben Hunt, is also a co-author and chief wordsmith of the Red Pill Revolution. Ben has always been fascinated in the question of how humans are designed to live on Earth. A homesteader, bushcraft expert, author, and speaker, Ben has spent decades exploring everything from science to religion and regenerative farming to paleoanthropology. Ben and Phil are on a mission to draw everyone's attention to what they call the Great Food Con, which is how food has been manipulated over time, not just for profit, but also to keep the population weak, sick, and more controllable. They teach others how to take back control over their health and well-being by connecting with our natural, species-appropriate way of eating and by using other ancestral lifestyle practices. This is a wide-ranging conversation about Ben and Phil's individual journeys with ancestral living and carnivore type eating. We talk about the war on meat. We talk about a little bit about why meat is not contributing to climate change. And we also get into other aspects, not just nutrition. We discuss ways to support emotional and spiritual health and so much more. So enjoy this conversation between myself with Phil Escott and Ben Hunt. Welcome to the show, Phil and Ben. It's so nice to have you both here.
Thank you for having us on, Rachel. Thank you. Excited.
Well, I know both of you guys have some different stories of how you got into all of this. And so I'd love to just kind of touch on both of those. But I think, Phil, you have a pretty interesting story of back in, I believe, 2010 when you got arthritis. And, I know you like to drum and you couldn't even drum or had a lot of pain with movement. And there was a time when you got into juicing and fasting and you became a raw vegan. Can you explain a little bit about what that vegan journey was like for you?
Yeah, sure. It was It was after 30 years of kind of plant-based, really, in various forms. Back when I was 18 years old, probably in 1980 or whatever, because I'm an old dude now. But I discovered the the macrobiotic thing, and I was sort of traveling around in wagons and double-decker buses and living in teepees and things like that. And it was all the rage back then. You had to do this macrobiotic eating. And I didn't really understand it at the time, but there was some digestive issues started, and finally I realized what people meant by back pain, and all the farting all the time and all of that sort of thing, and all the warnings that you get, but I didn't really figure it out back then. And then as I went on and got into the whole sort of Eastern spirituality thing, and then that dragged me further into plant-based. And there was so many warning signs. Early 90s, I was having to plunge my wrist into an ice bucket at gigs to sort of get through the second set. And I didn't really realize what was going on. But that was probably psoriatic arthritis starting back then. And the body gives a load of warnings, doesn't it? As I always say, please, everybody listen to whispers before they become shouts. And I didn't. And so by 2010, I even wrote books after that set in. I even wrote books saying, about Ayurvedic medicine and plant-based eating and that kind of thing. And then in 2010, absolutely crippled. One ankle blew up, then the other ankle, then a knee, and then the whole back, and then everything else. And I was absolutely trashed. And I must have lost about 90 pounds during my fasting and veganism stage, lost all the muscle. And then finally figured it out and went keto, and then did a load of cold thermogenesis, which really blows up the last of the fat. So I ended up ripped, but unfortunately, I ended up looking like a sort of concentration camp victim. It was not a good look, but at least it was the first time I'd ever seen my abs. And so I suddenly thought, hold on a minute, I've been stuck on the sofa, crippled. I've been eating 4,500 calories a day of fatty meat, and suddenly my abs have come out. Whereas I even used to own a gym and write for bodybuilding mags and all sorts, and exercised loads and counted calories, never got lean, because I believed the whole sort of carb loading thing. And that was a huge journey for me up to 2015, when I kind of got pretty much out of it. And then I wrote a book back in about 2014 called Arthritis, the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me. All the battles with the docs, and then how I figured it out. And then the third part is really all the sort of woo-woo and the spiritual and emotional balancing side of it. But it wasn't until 2015, when I went fully carnivore, that I realized a lot of people with these issues really cannot take that sort of stuff. And it was demonstrated to me last year when I had a bit of a rock and roll year, playing a lot of gigs around festivals, and grabbing, I never ate a plant, but grabbing things like dairy, pork, chicken, eggs, because it's easier to get hold of on the road. And I ended up in a mess November, December last year. I'd lost another 45 pounds, and I had to go back absolutely to strict fatty lamb and beef, salt and water, just a real ruminant animal diet to pull myself out of that. But I got out of it in about 3 months, whereas it took me 3 years before messing about with the keto sort of stuff. And some people have to go that far. And now I just kind of do consults for people who are in a proper mess, with autoimmunity. And I see, it's amazing, really, because, as a sort of plant-based yogi most of my life, I thought I'm never, ever going to become that carnivore guy. But some people have to go that far. And, I'm one of them. And so I pulled myself out of that and just nipped off to a sort of half gig, and going off to a gig after this. And, things are fixed again. But it's been an interesting journey to show just how strict some people have to be when they're autoimmune. And you see, I always bill myself as probably the worst idiot on the planet, because I made every mistake that you can ever make. And so I can see the mistakes that other people make. And And now it's getting serious. This is why I've teamed up with Ben to do the Big Fat Challenge and whatever, just to show people how serious it is now that there is a war on meat, and it's a food conspiracy, and how it's gone back centuries, which we've written about in our Red Pill Food Revolution book, and we deal with on the Big Fat Challenge, that we're not dogmatic. People should eat anything they want, but when you see now what's happening with them, trying to demonize our ancestral diet, it's things are getting quite worrying now. So, sometimes I'm not my usual chilled self and really do start shouting about it, because we need to save our food for our kids. Anyway,
Yeah.
Ben.
Well,
Thank you.
my story is much shorter and far less interesting. I haven't been as much of an idiot, unfortunately, as Phil, so I haven't learned half as much as Phil's had to learn over the years. I came to this point through a completely different route. My wife and I moved into a big house about 12 years ago. We've got a 2-acre garden, and I was a really passionate kind of conservationist, environmentalist, and I got really into the idea of trying to pull carbon down out of the atmosphere and building soil and stuff like that. I designed and built my own greenhouse. I used to grow a lot of our veg and stuff like that. And then that took me to, because I mean, I've just always explored how should we live, right? How can we be happy and healthy and good citizens of the earth? So that interest in kind of no-dig gardening and agriculture and how we should feed ourselves took me to conferences and seminars and stuff like that around regenerative farming. And then I heard that people were saying some weird things, like not only apparently were ruminant animals like cattle and sheep and stuff really important in the cycle, in the natural cycle for building soil and stuff like that, but actually they were talking about things I'd never heard before, like DHA and EPA and conjugated linoleic acid, and how these things were really, really important for our health. And I thought, is this true? Because like everybody else, I've been brought up in the sure and certain knowledge that fruits and vegetables are the healthy option. We should eat as many of them as we can. And, meat, if anything, is an extravagance and probably not very good for you. So I knew that as an absolute statement of fact. And then I came across the community of people who ate exclusively meat and fat, bumped into Phil. We got on really, really well. And we've been working together now for about 3 years. That's it. But I've realized the difference in my own life, even just coming from a standard average rubbish diet, better energy, finding my natural physique as well, and just how easy and natural it is, and I just feel so much more human than ever before. So here I am.
Thank you guys for sharing those stories. What does a normal day look like eating for you both? Just so people can understand, like, what does it mean to really eat meat and fat?
Well, mine's really simple. It's funny because I've had 2 emails today asking, what do you eat for breakfast? And
I get those too.
yeah. It's the first thing that people ask, apart from how do you even do a poo, but what do you eat for breakfast? And I always say, well, were our ancestors sitting in caves thinking, I wish they'd invent Cocoa Pops because we got nothing for breakfast. It's crazy. We have this carb-based mentality where we need to sort of start off the day, we're starving already, and then we need snacks through the morning and a sandwich for lunch and all of that sort of thing. And I don't have a concept of breakfast anymore at all. So for me, it's fatty beef and lamb. I will stray from that, especially when I go around to Ben's, because he has access to pork that's actually been fed some decent food, and it's got very good bacon comes from it, and so it's nice. So I can indulge in bacon when I go to Ben's, but not very often. But it's just, for me, it's so simple. It's just eating fatty ruminant meat when I'm hungry, stopping when I'm full, and waiting until I'm hungry again. It's that simple. And each day it's different. You know, like today I've eaten twice. Well, actually, I haven't, but I'm going to plan on eating after this podcast, and I'm going out to a gig, and that'll be the second time. But quite often it's once a day. For me, it usually averages out as like 3 times every 2 days. And it's not, you know, there's not a particular meal that I'll have, but, you know, roast lamb, slow cooked beef ribs, casseroles with bone broth and some fatty cut of meat that is cheaper, but it's sort of tougher, but beautiful in a slow cooked casserole. The occasional steak, ground beef, ground lamb, burgers. That's me. Whatever's in the house, whatever I fancy. Ben hasn't pushed himself so far, so he gets a few more privileges. So his is slightly different.
I do. So my breakfast this morning, I had about a pound of ground beef, about 20 odd % fat. I had 2 mackerel fillets on top of that, and probably 2 ounces of tallow. So it was like a soup. It was like this ground beef and the fish, and it was all just mushed up. I just ate it with a spoon out of a bowl. Later on tonight, we're going to have beef rib, again, really fatty, and probably we'll have fries that are just potatoes, just deep fried in tallow again, because I haven't wrecked my gut in the same way that Phil has, to my knowledge. But you know what Phil's talking about, this frequency of eating is a really crazy thing, because I used to be the hangriest bugger you could ever meet. If I went 2 hours without putting something floury in my face, my blood sugar would drop. I'd get emotional. I'd get grumpy and grouchy and stuff like that. Now, I mean, I ate this morning, 9 hours ago. I'm absolutely fine. I could probably sail through till tomorrow really easily. And that's simply because of the fat. I am simply fueling my body with the manufacturer's recommended fuel, which is animal fats, and lots of it. And the more fat that I eat, the more body fat just melts off my body as well. It's crazy. It goes against everything we've been told.
It is crazy. I used to have that problem too. My mom would, it would kind of be like a joke, like, oh, Rachel's hungry again, because I would get so flustered and frustrated and that hangry feeling and like always having to eat. And I definitely ate a lot of carbohydrates when I was younger and all sorts of processed foods. And I see the same thing happen with my clients, right? When they start to understand, oh, it's really important to reduce inflammation, to balance your blood sugar and balance your meals and cut down on all of these processed things. But I'm curious, how do you guys guide people? Like if somebody is wanting to start to eat a little bit more like this, what are some of the first steps that they take? Because I'm assuming it's very drastic to go from standard American type diet to something more similar to this like ancestral way of eating.
Yeah, sure. I guess you were eating all the time because you were training as well, right? I mean,
Yeah, I was an athlete for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. You got some good shoulders going on there. I can see you still maintain that.
Thank you.
Very, very cool. I deal with people who are very, very sick, mostly, even people who failed on the carnivore diet. And for me, it's always, I ask the question, are you eating pork, chicken, eggs, or dairy? And if they are, then that's the reason usually why they're failing. Or some people even fail on a sort of what they call the lion diet now, after Michaela Peterson made it popular, but even they're failing on that because they're eating too much protein and not enough fat. And at the time when the gut's leaky, going through the proteins getting through into the blood, the undigested proteins, even though they're great proteins from ruminant animals, they can still cause an issue in people who are autoimmune. But that's a temporary thing. It's not like proteins from a cow or a sheep or a bison or whatever will cause any leaky gut. It's that when the gut is leaky, that can still cause issues. But when the gut seals up with all the fat, the high fat. So for me, it's a bit different for Ben because, as well in the Big Fat Challenge that we do, we're really open to people at whatever level they're coming in, but it entirely depends on their history. If somebody comes along with raging rheumatoid arthritis, I have to say to them, look, and you've got to just cut everything. you've got to go fatty beef and lamb. I have a good friend called Sophia Clements, Dr. Sophia Clements, and she works at, well, she runs Paleomedicina in Hungary. And the results they're having there with their PKD, Paleolithic ketogenic diet, with, you know, just very high fat meat, is extraordinary. You know, not just autoimmune conditions, but getting into the cancers, stopping glioblastomas in their tracks, everything.
Mm-hmm.
But they have to be so strict, you know, their clients, and they reckon that, you know, 100% compliance is 100% success rate. And the people who fail are the people who slightly deviate. And a lot of people get cross with them because they say, oh, you know, I tried it. But if you actually look into what they did, even a little cheat, you know, even some dairy, which is, you know, it's one of the two areas, that and factory farming, that I agree with the vegans, and that dairy, you know, is not really very good for humans past the point when they become adults. And, you know, I just did a podcast with Sophia on my Red Pill Buddhas podcast, and I went really deep into the autoimmunity side, specifically into the dairy side, because Ben and we met her at a food conference in Sheffield, near where Ben lives. And we took her out for a walk around the Peak District, you know, and showed her all the nice English countryside and what's left of it. And she dropped a real bombshell on us that raw dairy is worse than pasteurized dairy. I have a really open mind. I was thinking about that, and I thought, okay, because she gets the very sick people too. And she was saying, well, look, the raw dairy still has all of the growth factors intact because it hasn't been pasteurized. So down the line, those growth factors can cause unusual cell replication, mitochondrial dysfunction, and problems set in. However, the immediate issues are usually with the people who are eating pasteurized dairy. So they say that, well, that's worse because the enzymes are destroyed and they can't digest it. So everybody's lactose intolerant, all that sort of thing. But the concept that she had, and people getting cross with me, why are you so easily led? Why do you believe her? Why do you? Well, because I've got an open mind, and you know, being wrong has been one of the greatest benefits in my life. So many times that I've learned all the new info. But she hit us with that one, and I was totally open to it because, I mean, as Ben said when we were interviewing her, you know, milk is designed to make a small animal grow into a large animal, but past adulthood, then that excess signaling to grow can cause some sort of mitochondrial issue. And also, you know, dairy is also very, very hyper palatable, very addictive. And so, you know, I could eat cheese all day, nothing but cheese. I could just stuff my face with blocks of cheese. It's so delicious.
Addictive.
But it's that combination of fats and carbohydrates that doesn't really exist in nature, except in breast milk. So, you know, then in the dairy as well. So some people are fine with it. You know, you get somebody with diabetes and no particular autoimmunity issue, and they can eat eggs, chicken, pork, dairy all day long. They'll fix their diabetes. It's a joke illness. It can be reversed very quickly. But, you know, somebody who is seriously autoimmune, it's not a good idea. So I'm waffling, but the long way around is that for me, you know, it's really better to go completely lamb, beef, salt and water for a certain time, and then reintroduce other things once a week or whatever, and see what you get on with. But you know, I'm seeing very different things, and on our Big Fat Challenge, we're not as strict as that, because people are coming from different areas. If somebody's just got to lose weight, well, you know, what the hell? That's not going to kill them in a month. So get them to transition. Also, there's one more quick thing, Ben. I mean, one thing that we do go into is the oxalate issue, because sometimes when you cut all oxalate foods, then you can dump very quickly. Been there, had the kidney stones. Yep. Horrific. You know, I had Sally Norton on my podcast recently, and we got into that, and I got into trouble last year as well. And that started with a kidney stone. So even 8 years after going carnivore, the oxalate dumping can probably happen in waves. And so some people, you know, if they're not desperately ill, then you can transition them off maybe to minimize the oxalate dumping. But, you know, if somebody comes with pancreatic cancer, seriously, I'd say 11-day dry fast. Blow it out. If somebody's given you 2 months to live, what have you got to lose? You know, the more you subtract, the more the body gets into a state where it can begin to heal. Right, I've stopped waffling.
but on the big fat challenge, we get a huge range of people coming on. Like Phil says, they might want to shed a load of extra subcutaneous fat, or they're more interested in preventing health problems down the line, or you know, we've had people with like type 2 diabetes and stuff like that as well. So a big spread of folks. So on the challenge over 90 days, we take it just week by week, starting obviously with, but like Phil says, it's subtraction, it's elimination. So we start with, please, number one, cut out the seed oils, you know, the so-called vegetable oils, 100%, the hyper-processed foods, because they've got all the other kind of crud in it. And we talk about sugar, we talk about the rest of the carbs, the rest of the plants. You can go as far down this as you want. This is what we say to people. It's your challenge. And one of the key things really is to get folk to own their own choices. So we don't talk about cheating and falling off the wagon, stuff like that. It's like, no. If you want a day when you go and stuff your face with pizza and drink Coke, you have to own it completely. And please, if you're gonna eat that packet of cookies, enjoy every bite, because there's nothing worse than sitting there stuffing cookies into your face and hating yourself at the same time. No, just you know, do it. But and we have people who and there's different personalities, of course. You know, some people, like for me, I like the all or nothing thing. I like the strictness. I like the idea of, right, I'm going to do a 3-day fast, 3-day, you know, dry fast or whatever. I don't really do moderation very well. But so yeah, there's lots of approaches to it. You can phase it out in a way, and the other key thing is that the reason why we say it's 90 days is because it takes time, not only for you to retrain your habits, which is very, very, very hard. And in particular, wheat and sugar, we find they're worse than nicotine and heroin, really, to give up for many people. And the addiction lasts a long time. They really should be described as recreational, if not hard drugs, these things. But the retraining your thinking as well, because we've been indoctrinated for, I mean, we're a lot older than you are, so we've had a lot more decades of having this drummed into our heads that you should have your 5 a day and eat the rainbow and have a balanced diet and stuff like that. So there's a lot to unpick and unlearn from all of that. So yeah, so it always takes some time. Yeah.
Can I just with one other thing that I forgot, and that is, you know, again, we say we're just not dogmatic, but you know, as long as people were educated about what they're actually eating, because, you know, first of all, people get sick, they go straight to the doctor and they get the pharmaceuticals. Then they realize that doesn't work if it doesn't kill them first. And then they get to, oh, I'll do all the supplements. Now, most of those are full of fillers and they keep the gut leaky and they do no good. And with a leaky gut, you can't even absorb them. So they're useless. And people end up with cupboards full of supplements that end up in the bin as the sell-by date goes past, you know. And then they go, all right, I'm going to go into herbs. And I'm going, oh, now I need to eat vegetables. I need to eat, oh, now I need to eat raw fruit. Now I need to be vegan, fruitarian, breatharian, you know, when they go really nuts. And then they go, okay, well, you know, I've done all that. That's not working. This is my journey anyway, you know, and I see other people going down a similar path. And then they discover plant toxins. And this is something that blows people away. You know, like 99% of the animals on the planet are edible. 99% of the plants on the planet are toxic. Our ancestors knew this. I had Mary Ruddick on my podcast recently, you know, who was bedridden from veganism, fixed herself with pretty much a carnivore diet, now lives with all the tribes all around the world, from the Amazon, the Arctic, in Africa. And they all eat like 90 to 100% meat. And they have none of our issues. And some of these people eat some berries, they eat some honey, they eat whatever occurs, you know, in their latitude in the autumn, seasonally and appropriately. None of them eat stalks and leaves. Nobody has a salad. You know, nobody has anything like that. They don't eat that part of the plant that has so many toxins in. They know what they're doing. They eat some tubers when the hunt fails. They don't like it much, and often they chew them and spit out the fiber, because we don't need any fiber. And I say that, if people are healthy and they ate locally and seasonally, or even if they were healthy probably and even flew in inappropriate things like mangoes now and again, and they had some squash, the ones with the least toxins, and avocados and whatever, the fruits, these are things that we're kind of designed to eat. But when you've got screaming autoimmunity, quite often people can't handle that and they don't quite heal, even if they go to those things. I mean, we have a good friend called Dr. Anthony Chaffee, and he's, the guy looks like a Greek god. He's a neurosurgeon. He looks incredible. He's been on and off carnivore for a good 20 years, but, strict for the last little while. He's all over everywhere. But he's got a beautiful video on YouTube called Plants Are Trying to Kill You. And I haven't eaten plants since 2015 because I understood the plant toxins, but not as much as he did in that video. Blew me away. I mean, he's known since he was at med school, and one of his professors went, "No, I don't eat salads. No, I don't eat plants." And everyone's shocked. Why? He said, well, and this professor was bringing up the fact that there's 136 known carcinogens in an organic Brussels sprout. Anthony often, he amuses me when he goes, well, you might as well save money and buy the non-organic Brussels sprout, because it's only got 137 carcinogens because they've sprayed it with glyphosate. But you might as well dump the Brussels sprout and spray the glyphosate in your mouth, because there's so many naturally occurring toxins. But when you know that, like the least toxic veg has about 60, and if people get on with them, go fill your boots. But does anybody really like Brussels sprouts, for example? I always say that they should only be wrapped up in sweet wrappers and given to kids on trick or treating at Halloween. I never liked them. If I could eat buttery potatoes, dairy and meat, I'd be great forever. I'm all right on fatty beef and lamb. I mean, it's lovely to be stuck with that. Imagine a diet to cure autoimmunity that left you stuck with quinoa, for example. I mean, what a nightmare. So at least we're stuck with the best foods. But I think to tell people about the toxins, and even the deuterium, even in fruits, which have fewer toxins, that's another rabbit hole. And the absolute toxins of, as Ben mentioned, seed oils that were designed as machine lubricant and soap making additives. So if you educate people in that, and they're probably, if they've not got sick enough, then the body can handle those kind of things. And enjoy your seasonal fruit by all means, and even eat some of the lesser sort of toxic veg. But to educate people in exactly what's going on and how we have been lied to so much down the centuries gives people a completely different perspective on what they should eat, depending on their health concerns.
There's a really important point that leads on from that as well, isn't there, Phil, that we go into when we're coaching people a lot, which is your body is actually really, really good at removing environmental toxins that come in through the air, the water, the food, whatever. Your body's excellent. We've always been excellent at doing that within a natural kind of load or limit. The problem, if you think like Paleolithic humans would have, if they come across a bush that's heaving with soft fruits, or they find a big pile of nuts that have fallen off a tree or whatever, and they even will have gathered some grass seeds and grains. We know we've done that for tens of thousands of years. That, as well as eating the meat of animals that have been eating grass that's gone to seed as well. So you will have had all the omega-6s and everything else going into your body, and the deuterium from the fruit and the lectins from the nuts and everything else. But the point is that you'd gorge on all of that stuff in the late summer and autumn, right? And then you'd have the entire winter to breathe it out and pee it out and everything else. And you'd start from the following spring completely detoxed and ready to start again. Your fat cells store it, you burn your fat over the, everything, it all works perfectly well, in and out, in and out. The problem is today is that people think that they can go to the cinema and have a bucket of popcorn and a half a gallon of high fructose corn syrup and acids and stuff like that. People are just in this like hyper accelerated fat storage mode, more than our and toxifying mode 365 days of the year, and it completely overwhelms your body's ability to deal with those toxins. And that's why people get into situations like Phil was in, because his body was just completely overwhelmed and physically damaged by eating far too much of the foods that we would never have encountered in those kinds of quantities and frequency in any kind of natural scenario.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. First off, I just cringed at thinking of the giant big gulp soda with the popcorn. I have so many comments. You guys just gave so much great information. I have some comments on it, so people can follow along a little bit better. So Phil, I actually was reading a blog you wrote about you getting the kidney stones. And so I've read about that, and you know, that's very painful. And the oxalates, the whole thing you mentioned about those, I just want to say that if people want to know more about that specifically, I do have an episode. It's episode number 34 with Dustin McFarland, and he also was a raw vegan for a very long time and accumulated all the oxalates and had, you know, talks about how much pain he was in, and very similar story. He didn't have arthritis specifically, but some other things going on. And so if somebody wants to know more about like what is an oxalate and go down that rabbit hole, they can go do that. And then interesting, you guys brought up deuterium as well, because I don't think most people know what that is. But I had a really recent episode, number 65, and we talked all about deuterium. So people can go back and listen to those two to understand a little bit better on what the heck oxalates and deuterium are, first of all. And then Ben, you made a really great comment about—
Excellent. So we don't have to explain deuterium. That's brilliant.
No, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much. Yeah, go check those out, because we dive all into the science of that stuff. But and then Ben, you made a really good comment about what you say to yourself when you're eating certain foods. So I just love that, because I have clients too. It's like it's very challenging for people to mentally, emotionally start eating like this or take foods out of their diet, because we're so tied, like one, addictively tied, right? You talked about how sugar is more addictive than some of these drugs, which I've read stats that they say sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine, which is pretty crazy. So people have these addictive and also emotional ties to food. And sometimes you fall off, right? And you, as you're going through the process, you might reach for the cookies or something. But then I have people telling me, I'm so sorry. I felt so bad that I ate this food. I can't believe I did this to myself. I messed up. And it's like, whoa, we need to just, like, if you're going to do that, like you said, allow yourself to just have that moment and savor it and enjoy it, and don't beat yourself up about it, because the way that we talk to ourselves and our emotional health is linked to our physical well-being. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. And I actually do want to see if we can get into some of that emotional health and everything as well. With, I know you guys touch on spirituality and emotions with our health, but before we get into that, I want to hear some of your opinions on the war on meat, and if there's anything that you haven't touched on that yet that you want to debunk about that topic, like with climate change and those types of things going on.
I mean, wow. Just the climate side of it, we could go on for hours and hours and hours just on that part. I think the simplest way to approach it is to think, like, as science tells us, that the grasses have been on Earth for about 60 million years, right? They evolved. Dinosaurs went away about 65 million years ago. We had grasses evolved. We had animals evolved to eat the grasses. This is how nature works. And it's all just common sense, right? We've had that for that long. How many ruminants, how many grass-eating animals has the Earth supported at any point in the last 60 million years? We know the answer to that. We know the answer. It's as many as it could have supported, because that's how nature works. Right? It depends how many resources there are, and something always turns up to consume the resources. That's how life works. It cycles nutrients, it cycles energy that originally comes from the sun, and and it all eventually goes back to the soil and so on and so forth. So we've had grasslands and grass-eating, grazing animals for tens of millions of years, and the world hasn't choked to death or burned itself up. In fact, it's been a lot hotter than it is now for most of that period. We're actually roughly in the long term of things, we're at a minimum. We are at a climate minimum. Yeah,
Ben, that was because all those sort of massive mega herds used to hold their farts in and burps. It's because they were more polite back in those days.
We can't prove that they didn't. Yeah, but it's simply common sense. It's simply common sense. So yeah, on that side of thing, it's a tricky one, but it comes at every angle. I mean, there's three main angles, right? It's bad for your health, it's bad for the planet, and it's ethically wrong as well. And there was a great meme the other day that somebody posted around, that they posted on PETA's website or social media post, saying PETA says that we're not supposed to eat fish, but fish eat fish, and so is that wrong as well? How come fish were allowed to eat fish, but we're not allowed to eat fish? And then it says, PETA has blocked you, stuff like that. But it really is absurd. It's utterly absurd because, like I say, life just cycles nutrients. And every time, it doesn't matter where you are, on the land, in the sea, up a mountain, it doesn't matter. Wherever you get vegetation, you'll get animals that eat the vegetation, herbivores. Wherever you get animals that eat plants, you will get animals that eat the plants. Always, without exception, it's the way it works. Nature does things really well, and hasn't been sitting there waiting for a generation of nice middle-class white kids with rings through their noses to come and fix their final mistakes. No, nature's been doing it absolutely perfectly. Life has thrived. We've got these amazing, beautiful, rich ecosystems all over the world. And it seems to me that whenever man tries to come along and fix it with some technology, we generally cock it up and make things worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what I think, about this other side of it, I mean, Ben's gone into all the nonsense that we've been told about all the climate change and all of that sort of thing. And Ben's got some great stats about, how we've only looked at the last little bit to even pretend that there's climate change. If you zoom out and look at exactly what's happened over all the ice ages and stuff, it's not warming up at all. It's nonsense. But for me, the whole thing is this, you're never going to ascend to 5D. You're never going to get enlightened. You're never going to be spiritual if you eat meat. And this is such a con that I believe that our controllers or our elites has actually pushed through religion and various branches of spirituality over the years to feed us slave food and make us more suggestible, less able to see the subtleties, when your brain is fueled by decent amounts of cholesterol and saturated fat, which is, well, let's say animal fats, because saturated fats is a bit misleading. Exactly what we're made of is what we're supposed to eat, and then the brain works correctly. And all of this thing that it's not spiritual, it's not good for the environment. I mean, I'm sure you've talked about the enormous amount of crop deaths for our processed food and all the wheat fields and the soy and the corn and all of that sort of thing, and the amount of millions of wild animals, billions, that get killed for that kind of thing. So there is no compassionate diet. And what we're trying to do is to get people who have seen through other layers of the deception, whether it's anything from the medical system to banking to climate change to everything. And so many of them have seen through that, but they haven't seen through the diet side. And they're still convinced that plant-based is the way to go, when they can't see that the people who are pushing all of those other agendas are also pushing plant-based, and they want us to eat Bill Gates's Beyond Burgers and cricket flour and stuff like that, And this kind of thing is destroying the land. And if we can get away from the misconception that some kind of vegan diet is compassionate And even if they get sick, they go, even, you know, so I've had vegans, you know, the ones who don't send me death threats on my YouTube channel and whatever, they'll say, you know, you even if I got sick, I still wouldn't eat animals because I value animals so much. Believe me, when they get sick, then they sort themselves out, you know, they come to me and say, I'm sorry, you know, my joints are gone, my thyroid's in trouble, my arse has exploded, something's gone wrong, and we're sorry, you know, and we need to eat that stuff, because they realize that there is no compassionate diet. Well, apart from grass-fed beef and lamb, hey, isn't that the most vegan thing on the menu? And so if we can just do that and get rid of this divide and get people to realize the bullshit that we've been fed all of these years, then people can eat what they like and whatever, and we can discuss on a level playing field, instead of somebody suddenly screaming at you because they've watched a few vegan propaganda films and some Disney films where the animals talk, you know, and they think, oh, we can't do that, we can't eat that. And it's taken us away from our ancestral heritage. And those people, you know, those tribes have more compassion, more awareness, more connection with nature than anybody who lives in some high-rise block of flats and has decided they can't eat anything but quinoa and tofu to save the animals. It's insane. And we need to get rid of this now, because otherwise, if we don't, people are going to take meat away. And a lot of these vegans, you know, these days, who think that they're doing it compassionately and they're all very, you know, they're in that dangerous honeymoon period of veganism where things can really look better, but they're just swapping one set of plant toxins for another. They're going to get emaciated. They're not nourished properly. And down the line, they're going to need that meat. Or even if people are into organic fruit and veg, if they haven't understood about plant toxins and deuterium, great. But if they come for the meat and they succeed, they're going to come for that next. And we need to really wake people up about that, because they will have us on Beyond Burgers and cricket flour and lab-grown meat. I mean, this is lab-grown cell cultures. This isn't meat. This is grown under artificial light. And we haven't even got deep into the whole circadian thing, you know, of sorting out all your artificial light and sun exposure and that kind of thing, which is just another one of those ancestral disconnects. And I find that the more that you get right, you know, the sort of emotional balancing, getting into some EFT, which is great for getting rid of cravings, never mind childhood traumas, and then getting the light sorted, get out, get grounded. It's all very simple, isn't it? It's not rocket science. But the difficulty is in deprogramming people from all the crap that they've learned. And then they realize how simple it is. I mean, I studied diet for 30 years intensely, and I was wrong. And I had to admit that my first couple of books were bullshit. And I had to say, as I always say, why didn't I just look at a cave painting? There's one guy, one spear, one mammoth. There's no broccoli, there's no quinoa, there's none of that stuff. That's what we ate. And that's what tends to fix you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like 60% of Americans have a chronic disease nowadays, and something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just been increasing over the years, and it makes complete sense to me if you look at, okay, what has happened over the years? Increased chemicals and pollutants, increased blue light, increased pharmaceuticals, increased processed foods, pushes for plant-based. So it's like, when you look at that big picture, it's very obvious that we get further and further and further away from the way that we were meant to live, that ancestral way of living, and closer and closer to, or increasing numbers of chronic disease, you know, autoimmunity, cancer, things like that. So, you know, as you just alluded to, diet isn't the only thing that is important for fixing disease. So when it comes to, I want to touch a little bit on like the emotional and spiritual piece. What are ways that people can support that part of their lives for their illness?
Wow. Well, I think that is the point. You know, a lot of people come up about diet, don't they, and say, well, everyone's different. And like, as Anthony Chaffee says, well, if that was true, we'd be the only species on Earth that was different for. You know, there are not lions sitting there with a slightly different blood type who go, I'm just going to wait for the quinoa and tofu salad. I'm not going to have that antelope. Right. So I think, you know, saying we're all different in the diet side is nonsense. We are pretty much all the same. You know, digestive, You know, our digestive tracts are the same. We have the same physiology pretty much. So the diet is a bit of a no-brainer. But where everybody's path is different when it gets into the emotional and spiritual side, you know, it's a very complicated thing to get into, unless it's like a one-to-one consult where you can find out what's happened to people, because we live such unnatural lives that there are so many stresses. I mean, one thing that struck me about when I was talking to Mary Ruddick on my podcast, who lives with these tribes, is not only how physically healthy they are, but how incredibly happy they are, and how emotionally balanced, and how they're just grinning and giggling all the time, and they just have fun. I mean, you know, let's not put them on a pedestal. I'm sure they have their fights and their arguments, but you know, as a majority of the time, they're very happy. And yet you say to somebody, you know, in England especially, say, how are you doing? Oh, mustn't grumble, not too bad. And this is a normality. It's not like, yes, I'm bursting with joy for life today. It's very rare, isn't it? No, I've got these money worries. This has happened. You know, I've just been told that I've got ulcers or diabetes, or my leg just fell off in the night, or, you know, something's gone wrong. And and those are the things that you have to, for me, it's from that sort of background of sort of spirituality and sort of yoginess, I guess. It's a matter of acceptance, and it isn't what's happened to us, or even what's happening to us. It's our attitude to that, you know. And I often use the analogy of somebody stuck in a traffic jam on a motorway or a freeway or whatever as you call them there, and like there's two guys and they're in their cars, and one of them's sort of punching the steering wheel and swearing, and the other guy's just chilling out listening to some music, and what the hell, I'm stuck in a traffic jam. It's the same traffic jam, and it's your attitude to it. And so the guy might have sat there and realized that I'm in a traffic jam. I might have run someone over when I got home. Might have been in a crash and hurt myself. Maybe this traffic jam is the best thing that's happened to me. And, you know, for me, a huge part of my healing was at the point where I was just desperate. And I was at the point of sort of punching walls and going, why me? And, you know, at that point, which a lot of people get into, very resentful and sort of shouting at God or whatever, you know. And then I thought one day, right, maybe I'll have this for life. Maybe I'm going to be in this much agony for life. So I'm not going to die. So I want to find out how I can be happy. Not so much happy, but content and accepting of it, even if I keep it going, because I've been fighting against it. It's like when people say, oh, I've been diagnosed with cancer, but I'm going to fight it. And I think they're probably a little bit, can we swear on this podcast? They're a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So because they've not got the right attitude. Almost there, Ben, with my waffle. But for me, I said, I need to just accept it. And funnily enough, I did. I found that point where I could accept it totally. And at that point, my healing really accelerated. Because I was no longer panicking and again causing mitochondrial disruption by being in total panic. I just said, well, okay, I'm in agony. What the hell? What can it teach me? Let's chill. And that made a huge difference. So I think that to get people to that stage where they can have acceptance and stop fighting, because if they're constantly panicked and worried about everything, even a fully carnivore diet is not going to do it all. Sorry, Ben, carry on.
Yeah. And I think even to bring it back to food as well, that one of the and we talk about this at great length in the Red Pill Food Revolution that isn't out on sale yet, but you do get it on the Big Fat Challenge. But we go into great detail on the spiritual harm that is inflicted by saying to human beings that by tearing us away from our place in the natural order of things. Right. Every animal has its place. It's what does it eat? What does it try not to get eaten by? Right. But to say to humans, you can identify as a herbivore, you can identify as a fruit-eating animal. You know, it says to us almost like you have no place in nature. Right. And the subtext really behind a lot of the vegan movement, the animal rights movement, is actually misanthropy. It's a hatred of humanity. They want us to hate ourselves. It's a new kind of original sin in many ways. You know, it's your fault for being a consumer. You shouldn't eat the meat. You shouldn't, you know, they want you to stress about that time you put the plastic bottle in the wrong hole, you know. And it's really important for us to, another thing as well is that food used to be really something that tied us together as families, as communities. We would eat together, we would break bread together, right? Nowadays, people spend far less on food. We think food's expensive. It's not. We used to spend 40+% of our household income on food and stuff like that. And now it's more like 20% or less, right? But we're spending more on medications. We're spending more on pharmaceuticals and health insurance and stuff like that. And I would say the two are related. But I think it's really important for us to reconnect with our food and the seasonality of it and the locality of it. So one thing we really encourage people to do is to go out and find and meet your local ranchers, your local farmers, your local farm shops and butchers and stuff like that. Build relationships with these people. Really start to connect with your food in a way that, I mean, we don't all go out and hunt and then give thanks for the animal's spirit in a way that our ancestors might have done, but we can get closer than just going to the store, taking plastic covered things off the shelf, paying for it and bringing it home, right? Really connect with our food, because they say you are what you eat, but the truth of that goes very deep, I think, you know. So let's give up just taking things out of packets, putting it in a microwave and then putting it in our face in a mindless way, and really start to put food more, put it back at the center of life and what it means to be human. And part of that is to accept the way that we are designed. We have this divinely ordained place in the universe, in the order of things. And it is to be predators, it is to be carnivores, you know, and that's not a bad thing. So stop hating yourself. Like Phil says, accept yourself. Love is acceptance. And it's incredibly healing as well. Yeah.
Very, very good points. And yeah, acceptance, so important. And another thing that I think is important for people when they're going through a healing journey is not to just accept, but also to believe that they can get better, right? And really believe in the process and believe in the diet and believe in all of these tools that they can use for themselves. Because otherwise, if you're constantly thinking like, oh, I'm going to get sick again, or, oh, this could happen, or, oh, this might not work, you're putting a roadblock in front of yourself, basically. Well, yeah. I wish I had so many other things I wanted to get into. I know you guys are a wealth of knowledge, and there's two of you, so of course we couldn't get into all of the good topics, but I would love to do a little speed round with you both if you're open to that. So yeah, first thing that comes to your mind for each of these questions. Okay. What is one health tool that you feel like you could not live without?
Fasting. For me. Yeah.
Well, yeah, for me, it's a fully ruminant animal carnivore diet. Although it's not at the root of everything that goes wrong with people, it's probably the quickest way to get rid of symptoms and fix the gut.
Okay, amazing. What is your favorite thing to do for stress reduction?
Playing drums or fishing.
Yeah, I go out walking in nature, foraging, walking with my dogs. Got 6 dogs.
Okay. This one's kind of a fun one. If you were on a deserted island, what 3 things would you bring with you?
Knife, for sure. Maybe a fire starter might be useful, but I'm really into bushcraft, so I don't know. Mosquito net, probably, and a rowboat.
A rowboat, yeah. It's a smart one.
I'd bring a cow, my missus, and an unlimited supply of water.
Nice.
and a bull.
Yeah, two, right, to mate. If you could leave the listeners with one tip that they could start implementing this week, to help them live a healthier, happier life, what would that be?
Wow. I would say trust your intuition, but build your intuition on having some decent habits for a while, both in lifestyle and in diet, because our intuition is great once we get rid of our addictions, because everybody's intuition says eat a load of chocolate and a load of pizza because it's addictive. So get rid of the addictions and then listen to your intuition. It's a byline on my website, which just says developing your intuition so you don't need us anymore. My son's having a sneezing fit in the background. So just develop your intuition so that you don't need doctors, you don't need health gurus, you don't need diet gurus. Listen to yourself. It's a very, very bad business model, but it's a very good way for people to live.
Yeah, I'd kind of echo that and say, trust that your design is amazing and your body is incredibly good at healing itself. All you have to do is get the hell out of the way of it and let it heal. You'll be amazed at what it can do.
Amazing. I also want to make sure you guys have time to share a little bit about your challenge and, the other work that you guys do, or any links or information you want to share with the audience before we go.
Cool. Yeah, well, I don't know. I think I sent through my Linktree thing. You can find all my stuff in there, consults and whatever. And I think I've sort of got a unique approach to autoimmunity because I've made every mistake under the sun. And, I'm an old dude and I'm a slow learner, but I've got a lot of life experience, particularly of being ill now. And I think what I'm doing with Ben is just so much fun because we get on so well. And I mean, he fills all the holes in my knowledge. He's got, that sort of technical mind and statistical mind, and also with all the regenerative stuff. And I've got the sort of autoimmunity stuff. And so I think what we offer in the Big Fat Challenge is quite unique, because not only is it about diet, I mean, it's called the Big Fat Challenge to persuade people that animal fats are okay. We're not being rude about fat people or whatever. Both of us have been pretty chumpy in our time. And so we're not being rude about that. It's just the fat bit, refers to the fact that we are pretty much lipivores, fattivores rather than carnivores. And there is nothing wrong with that. So get onto the fats, get off the carbs. But there's so much more in it than that. And within that challenge, you get, all the 90 days of calls that we did from the beginning of January to the end of March, all of the daily calls, all of our weekly challenges, lots of other recordings that we do on all kinds of different subjects, everything from addiction to exercise to whatever. We cover all of those things, and light and, sun exposure, grounding, all of that kind of thing. But also there's a load of other things in there with the courses, my autoimmunity course, I think my starting Carnivore book, my arthritis book, all of those things. And I mean, good God, if somebody doesn't buy that for like pay what you can afford deal that we're doing, they're absolutely barking mad. Even the food revolution book. Listen, I've got a big Ben up. He starts talking he's a little bit too modest, right? I thought I was a good writer till I met Ben Hunt, and he's a beast. His way of putting words together is so extraordinary. And the Red Pill Food Revolution is wonderful. It's upcoming. We've got a load of delays of the publication of it, but it's there, on PDF and audiobook format, read in Ben's lovely voice, and it's there available pre release. And so that it's all included in there. And Q&As once a week. So, Ben, I've waffled on that.
Yeah, all I would add, the book alone is worth going for. If you do nothing else, join the challenge. Listen to the book or read it if you prefer to read. But the process of writing that book was mind-altering, life-changing for all of us involved. You will never look at food again the same way. I'm really grateful that you've had us on here, Rachel, but honestly, we've only been able to scratch the surface of the stuff that we unearthed in the writing process of that book that took us a couple of years. It is absolutely remarkable, and we're incredibly proud of it. So yeah, come along to thebigfatchallenge.com, and like we say, we need to retrain our habits. We need to retrain our thinking. Phil and I we feel privileged that we're able to help people to make that transition and see them come through, and the breakthroughs that people have and the difference it makes in their lives is just wonderful. I've never heard of anything in my whole life that is as powerful as going back to your ancestral way of eating and as close as you can to your ancestral way of living. It's and that's why it's just our life's work now. There's nothing else matters so much.
Well, this conversation was incredible. I'll make sure that I put all the links to all of your guys' work and books and the Big Fat Challenge and everything in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us as well, Rachel. I mean, I know about your journey, and I think we've had a pretty similar journey of, getting into a load of trouble and realizing that the medical establishment does not have the answers. And so well done to you too. And it's fantastic to get, however many people are out there doing these shows and whatever. And I think we're making a big difference now. And so fantastic to meet you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like this video and comment, letting me know what you enjoyed and what you want to see more of. Also, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you get alerts when new content is coming out and you don't miss any videos. And just a quick reminder that this information is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any illness or medical condition. Please consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, exercise routine, supplements, or medical treatment. If you're looking for a functional medicine practitioner, please reach out to me. And thank you again for watching, and keep striving to become your healthiest, happiest self.